think we're gonna get started maybe in just, is this too loud for you folks? Sounds kind of loud to me.
Perfect.
We're gonna get started here. Everyone's here from our panel. So everyone just kind of take a seat, get some last items of food if you're still hungry, and we're gonna kick this off. So I'm gonna have Dr. Ray just say a couple of words about the health center. What's that? I think what we're going to do, just to make it easier logistically, is Dr. Publiker's here. He has a PowerPoint, and I'm going to have all the panel participants kind of hang back. So he's going to be using a PowerPoint, and then I'll call you folks out. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Ray. He's going to talk a little bit about our program at the health center, and then he's going to introduce me.
Danny likes to be in control. So I want to thank everybody for coming. We did a similar presentation a year and a half ago, and things have changed at the health center since that time. We've developed a medication-assisted treatment program. We've had over 100 community members that have come, sought care, and are in a much safer environment at this point. So we were lucky enough, because we are a federally qualified health center, to be able to apply for a grant that allowed us to get a coordinator for our program, because I was just talking with Dr. Publiker, it gets pretty complicated when you really try to do a good job. So we were lucky enough to get Danny Bell, and so he's going to be the moderator and also introduce our panel and set the guidelines, I guess. So thank you again for coming.
Thank you, Dr. Ray. So my name, first of all, I really want to thank everyone for coming to this event. It kind of tells me that people are really invested in people's recovery and the overall well-being of the community. And the fact of the matter is, without you folks, we can't really have much of a community event. So I really want to thank you for coming here in your free time. So I'll talk a little bit about my background really quick. I'm going to be very brief, and then I'm going to talk about how the event is going to happen logistically. But like I said, Dr. Ray said, I joined the Sacopee Valley Health Center team in December 2017. And so this kind of topic is something that's very personable to me. So I'm a person in long-term recovery, and I entered recovery on October 5th of 2012. And I've actually met a lot of cool people because of that. So, and that's kind of why I got into this work. And the people who I was friends with, and the people who were getting better, said that if you want to be in recovery, you got to help people. And so I said, why not do that and get paid for it too? So that's a little bit about me. I work in inpatient, outpatient settings. So I'm from that point. So what's going on here? So we're going to try to do a 2-hour event. We're trying to be very conscientious of the time. And we're going to have, the first half is going to be dedicated to our speaker panel, and the second half is going to be dedicated to a Q&A. And so our intention was to give everybody a note card. So while you're listening to the panel participants, if you have a question of any of these people on the panel, or me, you can write it down on a card. Or basically someone can just give you a microphone during the Q&A. If you're not, I know sometimes it's a little awkward to speak in the microphone. I still don't like it. But if you're a little shy and you don't want to speak in the microphone, I can ask the question for you if you'd like, and just let us know. There's going to be about 2 or 3 microphones here for that purpose. We have evaluation forms which are on the front table here, and basically how we use that is we use that for information to kind of put on future events. There is a little incentive too. If you do fill out an evaluation, we're supposed to give you a raffle ticket. And at the end of the presentation, we're going to announce the winning raffle, and there's a $50 gift card to Kohl's in there. So, and to my right here, we have a whole bunch of resources here. We've got a resource table, and so part of the intention was we wanted to put this event on to let people know that there are resources. And so we did a form like this roughly about a year and a half ago, and we wanted to do this one with a kind of a slant towards the family systems and how substance use disorder affects family systems. and what resources are there for families. So we've got an awesome panel. We've got some experts. We've got some people with lived experience. We've got a combination of people with lived experience and experts. And so with that, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Mark. Oh, hold on a minute. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce my panel participants really quick. So we have Dr. Mark Publicker. Dr. Publicker is an addiction MD, and he was also the medical director for Mercy Recovery Center. Has a lot of experience in the field, has done numerous awesome things. So we also have Jean Flynn, and Jean Flynn is from Massachusetts, and Jean lost a son to a heroin overdose, and actually does a lot of advocacy work and works with a lot of families. We've got Julie Lanoy, who's an RN, and is also a social worker.
Sure.
So Julie runs bereavement groups and support groups for family members. Their model's based on the Center for Bereaved Children, so she'll talk a little about that. We have Tommy McElhaney and Patricia McElhaney. Mother and son, son's in recovery. Son is also an LADC. They're close friends of mine, so I know them pretty well. So they're going to speak on their experience. We've got Brian Hink, who's a state trooper. He's going to speak from his perspective from law enforcement. And then we also have Charlene Barton, who's a local therapist in the area who owns Across the River Council, and she's going to speak as well. So with that, can we just have a quick round of applause for everyone that showed up on the panel? Okay, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Publicker. He's going to talk a little bit about the illness of substance use disorder.
Okay. Hi. I have a lab puppy, and she chewed on my eyeglasses this week, so the lenses are completely scratched. And with the light coming in, I can't see any of this. So just to let you know, hopefully I won't stumble too much. Now, okay, so I specialize in addiction medicine. I've been working treating addiction since 1983, beginning with alcoholism in Pittsburgh. And I've had a strange career. I was at Mercy Hospital for 2003 until they had the bad judgment of closing it as the opiate epidemic was peaking. And having for the first time in life being unemployed at 65, I opened up a private practice, which has been an interesting experience. And it's interesting, I'm in Portland, virtually all of my patients are lobstermen from down east in the mid-coast, which I learned a lot about. They're making $535 a pound. They're hauling about 400 pounds, which is a lot more than last year. So, it occurs to me that it would be great to shut that light. And it would also be nice if there we go. So I have a Facebook page. I put really good stuff on it. There's a couple of really good posts that I put up in the last 2 days. So I would recommend it. It's none of it is self-promoting. It's just interesting articles. It's a particularly good one right now on recovering women who have opened up their own aquaculture and made great stuff. Okay, so we need my talk is to be on neurobiology. So I try to make this something which is understandable to lay people. So the first thing you have to be aware of is that all animals that have ever successfully existed have a circuitry that provides them with pleasure for engaging in behaviors that are necessary for survival. So we actually have, let's see if this works. Oh no, I was hoping the laser would work, but I hate lasers, let's see. Is that a laser? No. So what do animals need to do in order to survive? Animals need to eat, they need to drink, they need to sleep, they need to socialize, they need to engage in sex. All of these things are necessary for survival individually and for the species. And nature rewards us, gives us pleasure when we engage in these behaviors. So this is called the neural circuitry of reward. You can see Where that is, it is way deep down in the sub-basement of the brain. So this is not the part of the brain that thinks, that plans. This is a part of the brain that is very primitive, very old. We can look at it in rats. We can actually see it in fruit flies. Okay, so all drugs of abuse bind to this neural circuitry of reward. So this is the key point. We know that where pleasure arises, and we know that all drugs of abuse, while they also bind to other sites in the brain, all of them primarily bind to the circuitry of reward, this single area. It's called, test later, it's the nucleus accumbens, it's an interesting part of the brain. And one of the ways that we know this is self-stimulation studies. You can take an electrode, put it into that part of the brain of a rat, and allow the rat to press a bar, and the rat gets a little shock into that part of the brain. The rat will bar press indefinitely. We can also put a drug like heroin either indirectly into the nucleus accumbens and allow the rat to bar press, or we can give it to them through a vein. The rat will do the same thing, it will bar press. So we know where that reinforcing pleasure arises. It's deep down in the center of the circuitry of the brain. So my society, the American Society of Addiction Medicine, it was interesting. I gave a talk at Berwick's police department a few weeks ago, and on the panel was the Maine DEA, not MPEA, DEA agent from Maine. And he gave a great talk, and I agreed with 100% of what he had to say. But he said, we have to be careful. We shouldn't use the A word. And the A word for him was addiction. I said, no. Addict is the A word. Addiction is the disease. So American Society of Addiction Medicine. So what is addiction? So it's a primary chronic disorder of the parts of the brain that regulate emotion, reward, memory, learning, and pleasure. And dysfunctions in that circuitry lead to those characteristics of addiction that we know involved with. Every time I give a talk, I use different slides, so I have a secret slide I put in there. So the characteristics that we know of addiction are all occur because of dysfunction in this neural circuitry that provides for reward, memory, learning, and motivation. So, what is addiction? Addiction is an overwhelming compulsion to use a substance, and against which there is a lack of control and an inability to inhibit the compulsion, craving that drives people to use the substance. So, overwhelming compulsion characterized by craving, inability to oppose, to inhibit that craving, and leading to the use despite escalating personal harm. This is important. You ask yourself, gosh almighty, that person has overdosed, that person has been in prison in and out 4 or 5 times, they've lost marriages, they've lost jobs, they've been homeless. Why in the world are they continuing to do this? I want to make the case we're talking about a brain disease. And that part and parcel of this brain disease is this inability to oppose the use despite the escalating personal harm. And importantly, the use of the substance occurs at the expense of naturally rewarding pleasures. So we're supposed to experience pleasure from waking up and seeing our children. We're supposed to experience pleasure by going outside on a beautiful day. That keeps us going from moment to the next. We're supposed to enjoy eating food. We're supposed to enjoy socializing with our friends. So those things are inherently necessary for survival. What drugs of abuse do is they hijack this system and basically give the false message being that in order to survive, what you need to do is use this drug and use this substance. This is really a quite powerful and frightening circumstance because once addictions develop, typically there are changes in the brain that can be chronic and in some cases permanent. Okay, let's talk about risk factors because this is increasingly interesting. So we're identifying that probably 40 to 50% of people with addiction have a genetic vulnerability to the development of addiction. Now here's an important distinction. You can have a genetic vulnerability for diabetes, But having the genetic vulnerability doesn't mean that you will develop diabetes. There are factors outside of genetics that influence the expression of the gene. So simply having a parent or a grandparent or a brother or sister indicating that there is genetic loading present doesn't mean that that person is destined to use. It requires both the genetic vulnerability and other factors that intervene, that actually change the expression of the gene, which leads to the development and expression of the disorder. So let's think about what other factors are external. Well, trauma, abuse, neglect in childhood, all of these alter gene expression. One of the things that we've learned is that early abuse and neglect actually change the brain's manner of reacting to stress. There's a hyper-reactivity to stress. So later in life, that hyper-reactivity, when people experience stressful circumstances, increase the likelihood of the use of the drug in a failed attempt at relieving the stress. Parenting styles are one of those factors in terms of abuse and neglect that can increase the risk. Peer group, well, everybody understands peer group. One of the things I'll throw up, because I'm not going to be talking about prevention, but one thing that I really recommend is counterintuitive: don't have your kids take after-school jobs. After-school jobs puts kids in proximity to older teens, young adults, who can introduce them to behaviors such as drug abuse, and gives the kids money which is not under the control of the parent. So there's actually very good literature that after-school jobs is an increased risk. The best jobs are ones that are adult supervised, whatever they are: sports, chess club, dance. Drug availability. The state is awash with drug availability. There isn't a place in the state that I know of where drugs are freely available. When I was at the recovery center, I got a call one night for an admission from Trescott, Maine. Raise your hand if you know what Trescott is. There we go. So, when you're from away, as I was, what you do in the middle of the night, you go to Google and you go to Google Map, and you get a dot and you start expanding and expanding because you're looking at something, a landmark, and expand and expand and expand. You see green, you see water, and suddenly you see St. John, New Brunswick. So there isn't a place where drugs are not available. Stress, I'm going to talk a little bit later about stress and its role in drug use. Social isolation makes a huge difference, especially in adolescence. Traumatic brain injury. We wonder about, you go downtown Portland and you see these homeless alcoholics walking around and you say, gosh, what is the matter with them? Why can't they stop drinking? Well, if you think about homeless alcoholics, a lot of them hit their heads 10, 15 times a year on the cobblestones. They've got traumatic brain injury. We talk about what happens with football players with nutritional brain injury. We have poisoning from alcohol. There's a whole variety of poisons. You do a brain scan, their brains are different. So think of them the way we worry about football players who play without helmets. Mental illness. I saw a woman today, very nice woman, coming down from Damariscotta, and she actually is in a program that the chief of police in Damariscotta has developed. Very humane. A lot of the police chiefs in the state are really humane or interested in helping people rather than locking them up. But this woman has a long history of relapses and incarceration. She's got bipolar disorder. So what does her bipolar disorder do? It gives her dysregulation. Her impulsivity level is high. Her judgment is poor. And we combine that with her drug. Exposure to the drug is going to be powerful in terms of incentivizing her use of the drug. And she lacks basically that normal brain that would have allowed her to inhibit the use of it. So, mental illness, PTSD, those of us who work with patients with drug addiction, alcoholism, it's easy to say that 85%, 90% of the women in particular have been molested in childhood. So PTSD that is related to childhood abuse and neglect is extremely potent in terms of factor creating addiction. Then we have other attention deficit disorder, another disorder in which one's ability to regulate emotion, to be able to anticipate consequences, to be able to inhibit impulses, all of those contribute to increased vulnerability to the development of addiction. Okay, we'll talk about addiction as a brain disease. I love this slide. On the left side is a normal brain. You don't have to be a neuroradiologist to kind of get the point of what a normal brain in terms of brain activity would look like. So all of that lovely dense stuff is brain functioning. That's what a brain should look. If we look on the right, we can look at an addicted brain. You don't have to be a neurobiologist to get that sense that there is a profound generalized dysfunction, decrease in function throughout the brain. Now, the nice thing about this slide is below it, the researcher shows what a healthy heart would look like in terms of the scan of heart function. And then we can take a look at myocardial infarction. So we can see that physically there are differences between healthy brain, unhealthy brain. Heart, healthy heart after coronary artery disease. So let's lay to rest the concept that addiction isn't a brain disease. It is a brain disease. The changes that occur down to a molecular level. And that molecular level occurs throughout the brain. So it's important to understand and accept that. These people don't want to be drug addicted, I promise you that. Another type of brain scan. This is not an anatomical brain scan. It's possible actually to visualize brain activity as opposed to brain anatomy. So when we're looking at what looks like Swiss cheese on the heroin affected brain, what we're looking at is decreases in function, because that should be completely smooth. So, when you look at that brain, it doesn't take a lot to be able to figure out that brain is not working well, that brain doesn't feel good. And the longer one uses, the more potent the drug, the worse this is going to be and the harder it is to recover. Now, the slide on the right is your brain on marijuana. And this is an important thing to note, because if you were to overlay it, I had a slide of attention deficit disorder. It would look pretty much the same. So at the top, you'll see these two areas that are holes. Again, these aren't anatomical, these are functional. Those are the parts of the brain that think. It's a part of the brain that anticipates, that thinks, that plans, that creates values. That area is not functioning. So that's an important point to recognize, so that, cannabis is not without a cost. Nothing is without a cost. Here's a good example. Alcohol functioning. This is while acutely intoxicated. This is look at the underside of the brain. So again, if you're a neuroradiologist, you see the brain does not look good. Up in the top where the frontal lobe is, that's under functioning. The nice thing about alcohol is alcohol begins to recover. You speak with somebody who's 30 days into sobriety, and the first thing they're going to tell you is, I'm on a pink cloud, I feel great. So brains with alcohol, especially if we're not talking about chronic late-stage alcohol, brains recover. So each disease, each drug causes a differential rate of recovery or lack of recovery. I found this slide. I just thought it was kind of grim, but I needed to include it. Okay, another nice scan, cocaine. Again, what I'm trying to demonstrate is the chronicity, the duration of treatment, the duration of addiction's effect on the brain. This is important because we have to understand, why has somebody had something bad happen to them? Have they gone out and done the same thing again? So in this scan, again, functional brain scan, we look at the top brain. The top brain is normal. All that lovely reds and oranges, it looks like the sun is going, so we know that brain is working. The second slide is a cocaine abuser 10 days after last use. So this is 10 days later, and it looks like the dark side of the moon. 100 days later, the brain is beginning to recover, but it hasn't fully recovered. So this individual is vulnerable in terms of thinking, planning, and the ability to resist impulse, as well as to regulate emotion. Okay, now, one way to think about addiction is that, and I'm desperately trying to translate words, but I like the concept. The concept is it's a disease of maladaptive learning. So we're talking about learning that is incorrect is wrong for a situation. So addiction affects those mechanisms that relate to memory and learning. And that there are brain circuits that shape these behaviors that all drugs with abuse, including alcohol, affect now. How does addiction affects thinking? Then there are the other conditions. Let's not forget fetal alcohol syndrome. When we think about causes, people may not overtly look as though they've had fetal alcohol, but there certainly are a lot of people walking around who do. And their ability to think, judge, be able to regulate their behavior is directly impaired and will be for the rest of their lives. So, coming into this, Nora Volkow is this brilliant woman. She's director of the National Institute of Drug Abuse. I have to use the term salience. Salience is a lovely word, and my translation, definition of it would be motivationally important. So something is salient because you know that if you're looking at it, you're going to get something. It's either going to be good or it's going to be bad. So salience could be good or bad. What she's talking about is dopamine. We've all heard properly, I think, about dopamine as a pleasure chemical. It turns out, more importantly, dopamine is a learning chemical. And dopamine determines salience of something. Here, let me see if I can explain this and direct this the best way. I don't know if anybody goes into Portland and has gone to Auto Pizza. I've lived in a number of places, including Italy and New York City, and honestly, I think Auto is up there among the best pizza, and I love Auto Pizza. Auto Pizza is on Congress Street in the center of town. My office is on Outer Congress Street. If I'm coming into town, Congress Street actually is salient. In other words, when I get onto Congress Street, my brain is firing. My brain is telling me, good, you're going on Congress Street. But my thinking brain is not aware of that. It's my underlying trained, below motivational brain seeing that. So I'm going into town for some other reason. I'm having a meeting with somebody at a coffee shop. And I get on Congress Street, and as I'm driving on Congress Street, that emotional salience, that motivational circuitry is kicking in. My brain has learned to associate something which is pleasurable for me, which is pizza, with being on this road. So the road is neutral, but my brain has learned that this is connected with Auto Pizza. So as I'm driving down into town, again, I am not planning on getting pizza. It is 11:45 in the morning. I'm actually not even hungry. But as I'm driving into the center of town, increasingly my motivational circuitry is firing. So I get by State Street, State Theater, and at this point I'm getting pretty close to Auto Pizza. At this point I become conscious of this motivational drive to eat pizza. And then this is even closer. You can get to that intersection with the Hay Building, and at this point I'm thinking, pizza. And now I'm really close. And amazingly, I'm able to find a parking space right in front of Auto. You almost never get parking in front of Auto, and I'm smelling it because they're baking it. It smells great. So Auto Pizza, I smell it, I can taste it, and I get to the door and it's 11:45 and they don't open until noon. So what has happened at that point to my emotions, my impulse, my craving for pizza? Well, it's really sky high. So, I try to do it, and, that doesn't work. And, I want to get into Auto at that point. So what is my circuitry that is telling me? Well, motivational circuitry, I have learned, my brain has learned to connect a neutral stimulus with the reward. Take that and imagine that you're driving downtown in Portland, 10:45 at night, and you're cocaine addicted, and you're passing the 7-Eleven, and you're not going to find cocaine because you're going to have for some other reason. But the motivational, the salience, the importance of that is going to powerfully overwhelm any intent or desire you have not to use cocaine. So here's George Koob is one of the most brilliant people in the country. He was the person from whom I think I learned the most about understanding the biology of addiction. So Koob has got this lovely phrase, I'm going to try to translate it, but I always love to say it, is that addiction represents a spiraling dysregulation of brain reward circuitry. So what does that mean? It's, we have this normal state of pleasure, and as addiction develops, we have this spiraling down, so there's less and less pleasure, our reward threshold has become that progressively increases, resulting in compulsive drug use and loss of control. And here's the term. I just love to say it's counteradaptive hedonic dysregulation, which is a nice way of saying that our brain robs from us that ability to get high from a drug and raises our reward threshold. So, 5 minutes is done. I just didn't make that sound. Here's the, it's called neuroadaptation. Basically what it's saying is we have mechanisms in our brain that are designed to be able to maintain a normal, healthy state of pleasure and reward. So that drugs of abuse change that threshold, move us outside the normal range of pleasure and reward, and that we have adaptive mechanisms that want to push us back to normal. We know just in normal life, this is the case. We have, if I say this is the normal range of pleasure, this might be the negative side. I'm driving down 95, and as you get off the 295 exit, the speed drops to 60 miles an hour, but you don't know that because I'm not. But if I get pulled over and I have a ticket, what happens to my hedonic tone, my reward tone, my pleasure tone? Well, it's decreased. But how long is this going to stay down here? Well, I'm going to tell my wife, I'll do that for a bit. And in a day, it's going to be normal. If I hit a lottery ticket, it's going to be rewarding. I'm going to feel great. But even if you win $1 million, your brain is going to want to adapt you back to normal state. So here's my illustration of what's happening with drug addiction. So this is a normal state. First time I used crack cocaine, the power of the drug surpasses anything that we evolved to experience. It moves us outside, so far outside of the range. I'm in this ecstatic state. Nobody has experienced this before. But our brain is designed to have these adaptive mechanisms that want to return us to the normal state, but because we didn't evolve with crack cocaine, the adaptive mechanism overshoots. So at the end of that cycle of use, I'm here. I started there, and that was amazing. So right away, the brain though has changing mechanisms. It's changed. Think about that slide of what cocaine looks like. Now, I'm not feeling as good as when I started, so of course what I'm going to do is use again. And as I use, the brain's changes are fundamentally permanent. I don't get back to there, but with each cycle of use, my brain's reward mechanisms, state of pleasure and reward getting lower and lower. So we start out with what's called positive reinforcement. People are seeking the pleasure from the use of the drug. But after enough cycles of use, intensifying the use, adding other drugs in order to be able to try to approximate what I'm looking for. When my patients see me, they're here. This is an intolerable state of physical, spiritual, emotional health. This feels terrible. There's no expectation upon using that you're going to get high. What you're trying to do is approximate some state where you're able to function and not be sick. The main reason people with opiate addiction, once it's developed, want to get well is it is intolerable to wake up in the morning, to know you're going to get sick, to be fearful you won't be able to find the drug. At that point, many times willing to do things that in a normal emotional state you wouldn't do in order to simply escape that temporary horrible state. So addiction, initiating use in order to get the positive reinforcing effect, the development of this brain change which produces this severe chronic negative state. And for drugs like opiate addiction, without treatment, generally this is going to continue to maintain until you wind up overdose or something awful is going to happen to you. So if you want to get the jail. I've got, I have 15 more slides. Okay, important. What leads people to relapse? Before I showed this triggered craving, like pizza, I get on Congress Street, it begins to trigger my drive to eat pizza. There's another more powerful trigger for craving, and that's stress. And in this experiment, you take the rat, you put the rat in a cage, the rat can bar press for food, the rat can bar press for heroin, the rat is addicted, bar presses for heroin. You detox the rat. The rat has the chance then to bar press for food or heroin. The detox rat goes for food. Unless you electrify the floor of the cage so that the rat can't escape the foot shock. So it's foot shock, foot shock, foot shock, rat relapses back to heroin. I think about my patients' lives. It's foot shock, foot shock, foot shock, foot shock. Husband left, there's domestic violence, you had a new job, the battery on the car died. It's foot shock, foot shock, foot shock. So stress more than anything is the most potent trigger. And of course, then as I was saying before, there are differences depending on in childhood that because of abuse and stress and neglect make people more sensitive to the effects of stress on their behavior and emotions. Actually, I'm coming pretty close. Okay, my last quote. I have this up in my bathroom, in my office, and patients love it. So if you can't see this, is just because you got the monkey off your back doesn't mean the circus has left town. The changes in the brain, by and large, are chronic, persistent. In some cases, the brain will recover, but the vulnerability that has been established by the use of the substance is always present. And it's for that reason, maintenance things need to be engaged in order to sustain recovery. Behaviorally, 12-step recovery, I think, is the most effective way. It's something that you go to frequently. You have a community of loving, non-judgmental people. There are stages of development and involvement in the program. It's basically a classic chronic disease model. Medications, and I just want to emphasize because nobody really knows about them, there are extraordinarily effective medicines for alcoholism, and nobody knows about them or prescribes them. My message is there is medical treatment that can dramatically decrease relapse rates for alcohol. So with that, having skipped some of the slides, but ones that I don't think were necessary to hear, I am done.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, so how's everyone doing? Good? Okay. So at this point, I'm going to have all our other panel participants come up to the front. Don't worry, all you have to do is just give the same talk Dr. Public did, and you'll be okay. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, I just have my panel participants come up here. Just join us at the front so people can see who you are. Should have a little, actually it doesn't really matter, but we have names. Just make it easier. And just a reminder, I think we did get some of the note cards that were passed out, so if you have questions, you can write it down and ask us. And remember those eval forms, the $50 gift card on the line. So just to remind you about that. So I kind of introduced you folks earlier during the presentation. So our panel participants, we have a pretty diverse panel here. We have people that are offering resources. Our intention was that we want to give you folks like something tangible from the presentation. We want to give you some information, but we also want to say like here's some tangible like sources of support. And they're gonna, some of these individuals are gonna talk about that. And we also, again, we have a lot of great organizations here with a bunch of resources on the right. So kind of feel like Alex Trebek right now. Okay. All right, so I think we're gonna start. Charlene, would you guys folks have a seat, you don't have to stand. So I think I'm gonna have Charlene Barton just talk a little bit about
Across the river counseling.
Across the River Counseling. I'm gonna hand this mic to you, Charlene.
Okay. I represent Across the River Counseling and Wellness. That is very close to Cornish, although it's technically in Hiram. It's just across the bridge, so it's right on the Hiram-Cornish line. So it's very, very accessible. We practice mental health counseling, substance abuse counseling. We work with families, with children, with adults. There are 3 other individuals who work with me, and we have openings at this time. All you need to do is call. We also have a website that has information on it about each of the clinicians that practices there. We also have a playroom that is very, very welcoming and good for the children. And it's, we have Bethany Jacques, who practices child-centered play therapy. We offer a variety of modalities, including mindfulness, movement, sand tray, and we have an art therapist who is coming on board presently. So anyway, as I said, we have openings, and we don't need any referrals. We take most insurances, and we also slide a fee. We also do some pro bono work. So we want to make treatment available to everybody in the community. I think that about covers it. Yeah.
My name is Brian Hank. I'm a state trooper. I've been a state trooper for 5 years. I've been assigned to this particular area. I'm very involved at the school. I'm on my 17th year of coaching sports here, currently with the girls soccer and softball programs, and I'm very active in the school's administration and their safety plans, and I think I'm probably here just as much as they are at times. Over the last year or so, I've been actively working with the health center and their panels that they've created. From our perspective in law enforcement, everybody thinks that we're out there just trying to, get the bad guy, which we are. We don't want people out there doing the wrong things. 95% of the people that I deal with are really good people faced in really bad situations. And I know that, and we all know that. But we try to, we're not those that, I deal with people that are addicted to drugs every day. Every day I sign on duty, I'm dealing with the drug epidemic, no matter what type of drug it is. And although we need to stop them from using, and we need to provide the resources that we can, most of our resource recommendations come through hospitals. Although the last week and a half ago, we referred someone to the health center with the new program that they're using, and I'm really hoping that they go, and that I never have to deal with them again on the road. But unfortunately, we need to catch these people that are using on a low level to try to help them. Those aren't the people we're looking for. Those are the people we want to help. It's those people from out of state that's providing the drugs in a large quantities that are making millions and millions of dollars, not using, but selling to these people so that they can use and sell it to their friends so that they can use to keep their business going. Those are the ones we really want. We want to provide the assistance and the resources for the users to give them the help they need, but we need their help to do that. And that's a very, very difficult situation for the person that's using. We're the worst people in the world that we're dealing with them, and they hate us, and there's so many names we've been called, but the bottom line is we are trying to help them. They don't see it immediately. We try to get them the resources and the help that they need so that hopefully they'll see that we're trying to help them, and maybe they can help us by giving us some information that will help us get the guy that's in New York City driving 3 Lex vehicles and has this mansion in the Park Plaza and, not using. Those are the ones we really need to stop in order for a small area like this to stop, having the drug issues that we have. So from our mission and our perspective, that's essentially what we try to do. And yeah, I guess that's what we do. We don't get a lot of positive feedback from these people at times, but we get it. Like I said, 95% of the people I deal with are really, really good people faced or in a really bad situation. And we just try to help them through that. And unfortunately, sometimes they have to go to jail to do that. But, thank you.
Hi, I'm Jean Flynn, and I find myself in these circles of addiction that I never imagined to be in. I had my son Brian, I suppose it started back when he was about 14 and had a snowboarding accident and broken collarbone. And in fact, the chaperone on the trip that gave him a personal ride in his own car home was a local policeman who became friends with over the years. But the collarbone was the first introduction to opiates. And I'm not going to say that he really took off on it right then and there, except for the fact that he understood it made him feel different, better. ADHD, this is what I think happens is opiates make folks that have any kind of issues where everything is intact and correctly within the brain makes them feel pretty okay. One thing led to another, that over a 10-year period, we dealt with some incredible struggles. I mean, I knew what it was like to be in my shoes as his mother, but I wondered from time to time, what was it like to be in his shoes? It wasn't a pleasant place to be. It certainly wasn't where he wanted to be. All of the things that he had planned, or we thought and we planned for him for a future, really disappeared. They totally disappeared. And I will say he gave me a gift of 100 days clean. That was fabulous. It was the best Christmas we ever had with him. He had gone to a treatment place out of state, and he came back a wonderful, personable Brian again. It was great. But he fell off the wagon, a friend died, and that's a point in time where you're on the fence, and you either fall off the wagon or you commit more to the sobriety because of it. And unfortunately, he went through a tough month or so, and came home from a baby shower one day, bright, beautiful, sunny, blue day, and I found him. He was done. He was gone. It's not that we didn't always think it could probably happen. It's just when it finally does, it's so final. So, I could have gone and curled up in a ball and hid in a corner, but through his wake, I found out that he helped a lot more people than I ever imagined. I had no clue how many people he helped, and I know that he did enjoy what he could with people to get to the better side of things, but I didn't realize he had reached out as much as he had and affected other people's lives. Couldn't save himself, but it really kind of opened my eyes to who he really was that I didn't know and understand. So, as time went on, I didn't get to know them way too well at the funeral home. My husband had lung cancer, and so 1 month later, my husband died. So we went to the funeral home again, and I get to know them way better than I ever imagined. They offered me a job, as crazy as that sounds. I had to take time to think about it, because I thought at first it was a little bit over the edge, but I was involved with speaking engagements because I really believed that Brian's voice was gone, so now I had to be his voice. And so whenever I was asked to participate in anything such as this, I was more than happy to do it. And I eventually went back to the funeral home and I said yes. I said I will either like it or I won't. And in my retirement, I said I'll give it a shot. But to me, it has been the most rewarding of I don't want to call it a career because I'm retired, so I don't do it full time, but I'm there to be able to help the parents, because there are a lot of parents that go through this. Able to help the widows, because I have dealt with her on that side too. And, it's just a place that I didn't know I needed to be, but it's healing for me as well. And through all the funerals, I got to know my own parish priest a little bit better. And through conversation, we realized that we both wanted to do something in the same direction. I really wanted to see about trying to start a support group, because there's a lot of people out there like myself who have lost children. And he wanted to do something to help, but he was really kind of at odds as to where to start. He didn't understand the whole situation as well as he would have liked to, but we put our heads together, and I do run a monthly support group now, and it seems to go quite well. You hate to see too many people have to come, except for the fact that it's sad that they come, but I'm glad that they do. I'm glad that they reach out. And the minute they walk in the door, they know we're all there for the same reason. Our grief is different. It's not like the grief from a car accident. We've been grieving. We've been grieving prior to the death. So, and the stigma that's out there, that all adds up into it. But that's kind of where I find my own relief and satisfaction to be able to be there and reach out for other people that are in the same shoes. So I decided to try to turn it into something positive instead of a negative. And sometimes I think I'm watching a movie. It can't really be happening to me, but life goes on and you kind of make this stuff up. And so you just put your foot forward and keep moving along and do the best you can with it.
Thank you, Jean. The theme of the night is hope for families. I think that was a great example of how to take something really hard and tragic and turn it into something hopeful that reaches other people. So, thank you. My name is Julie Lenoy, and I work for Visiting Nurse Home Care and Hospice of Carroll County, which is a New Hampshire-based county hospice and home care agency. We serve Jackson, New Hampshire to Sacopee area, so we're not exactly in your territory, but we're your neighbor. And my role there is as a psychiatric nurse and some of the behavioral health nurse for our county, and I serve on the hospice interdisciplinary hospice team, and also as the director for Crossings, which is a bereavement program for children and families that started about a year and a half ago. And it's North Conway based. We use the Children's Museum in North Conway as the site for our peer support groups for families who've lost a loved one. And we've had, at times in our enrollment, 50% of the families in our groups who are there because the loss they experienced was opiate related, which is a pretty high percentage. So we serve families, our services are free, and it's peer support. And so it's not a drop-in group. We work with our families and in an initial screening process to make sure that they're ready to be in a group, that group is the right fit for them. And that if it isn't, we help connect them to other resources in the community so that they'll be ready for that at some point in the future. So we work with kids ages 3 to 18 and their adult family caregivers. So we see a lot of parents who've lost an adult child who are now raising their grandchildren. And I'm sure you see that in your community too. And there's, as Jean was saying, that grief is different than the kind of grief that comes with cancer. Bereavement is, grieving is grieving, but the things that go along with grief for kids when it's been a maybe chaotic environment in the first place, and then they've lost their parent and are maybe 3 years old. This is somewhat of a setup for them for the future. So we're trying really hard to create an environment of community for kids and their families, their adult family members, to have a safe place to grieve in community. Our groups are facilitated by trained volunteer facilitators, and the model that we use is, for those of you familiar with the Center for Grieving Children in Portland, we developed our program in consultation with Portland. They were our mentors, and they trained our team because in our community, driving to Portland was just too far to be accessible for people. We wanted to create an opportunity for people to have a similar experience in our area. So we started in North Conway last summer, and we are now about to launch in Ossipee. So we have an Ossipee location, and we're eagerly awaiting referrals from anyone of you who may know someone who could benefit from our group. So I'd be happy to talk with you more about that. We do a lot of work with kids on validating their emotions. A lot of kids are mad. And in our culture, where bereavement is a thing you're supposed to do for 3 days and then get back to work, we do a lot of work on just helping kids identify what they feel and creating a place where it's okay to feel whatever that is and do it in a safe space, in hopes that they're developing some self-regulation skills that will serve them throughout their lives and ultimately be reducing their own risk for substance misuse in their future. So I'd love to talk with any of you later about how we might be able to help.
Thank you. So my name's Tommy McElhaney. I've never shared this kind of capacity before. I'm someone who struggles from substance use disorder or alcoholism or the disease of addiction. I recently celebrated 6 years recovery. Thank you, which means my family did too, and this is my mother to my right. And I guess we were asked to participate to share our experience, and then also in my time in recovery, I became an LADC and worked in the field and worked at a residential program and IOP. So also I'd like to offer my opinion from that angle as well. But I guess there's no real easy way to sum up the problem that we're dealing with. I do believe that it's like a cultural kind of epidemic at this point, and that it's multifaceted, and that there's no, one clear solution, And I think culturally that's what we want. We have other problems, and it's simple solutions. So for me, what I got when I started, and my brother also had issues too, so addiction was like a 15-year tornado that kind of like ran through our family. And then I can say when I personally started, messing around with opiates, and my alcoholism progressed, and cocaine, and all the substances, I pretty much did them at one point or another, or in combination with each other. But when I started them, I didn't realize what I was getting into. And in a sense, from my first use, it kind of took me on like a 15-year roller coaster ride, where I had very little insight into what was happening to me. The first time I woke up dope sick, I didn't know what it was. So I was, by the time, my family knew and we started entertaining these programs or medications, we knew very little, and we were like researching retroactively. So to people who are struggling in a similar position, I would say start doing research. That's where it starts. That's where it started for us. We started looking around online, talking to friends and family who had similar problems. I think that we as a family probably tried to keep it as a secret at first, but what ended up being helpful to me, in the later stages of addiction, was having other relatives knowing, and that I could lean on them, and having other, family supports. Because of the shortage of time, what ended up really happening and helping for me was the whole And I'm a 12-step recovery guy now. That's kind of how it started. I was introduced to AA meetings early in my addiction. I would have told you that it didn't work in the middle of my addiction. I was diagnosed with several mental disabilities in the middle and later parts of my addiction. I was homeless, in various psych units and overdosed and all of that good stuff. And in the end, I came back to 12-step recovery, and what I found is I don't get everything from 12-step recovery, but it's kind of like the cornerstone of my recovery. And I have like seen counselors and had to take medications and had to do a collage of things, but I would say that at least, so my belief system is kind of in line with 12-step recovery. Anyone who knows what that means knows that it does have like a spiritual component to it, which is difficult to quantify and medicate for. And so it is kind of controversial, I guess. But what I was going to say was, what ended up really working for me and my family, I believe, is my parents and close family members not trying to fix the problem that was me, because that's how it was for a long time. It was like, we just need to fix Tommy. And if you take a step back from that, what ended up happening was my mother especially, had to go the avenue of tough love, although, it didn't start that way, but they were always good at having boundaries and saying, we'll financially support you, but only at if the money is for a sober house, and then, mess that up, and then they'd be like, all right, well, give us the sober house's owner, and we'll pay them directly. And then so over the years, slowly, my financial support went, and then same with the emotional support. And in the end, I think I have a profound respect for my mother for being able to do this. What she did was basically said, goodbye, not knowing if she'd ever see me again. Somewhat convinced that I was going to die before her, and but for the grace of God, still might. But that's what helped me. So I know it's a progressive disease, and what I've learned, especially working in the field, is like that's not the prescription for everyone and every family. It's like, people have the disease to different progression levels, and what works at one point in the progression might not work in the other. And it's all based on an individual as well. So it's tricky, it's hard, it's trial and error. I would love to make it seem like, this is what happened, and this is very linear, but it wasn't. It was, more like a tornado, and it was more like trial and error. And, we're very lucky to, like, honestly, I'm not sure we could even answer how it ended up like this, but we're very lucky to have ended up like this. But I hope that wasn't too convoluted and helped some people. So good luck finishing that.
As Tommy mentioned, he has a brother. We have 3 children and a daughter who really haven't had any issues, but Tommy was struggling through high school in the sense that he could do great academically and party, and there were a lot of things like you don't know what's normal. Is that what you're supposed to do? I wasn't a party girl, so it wasn't normal to me, so I was always, wondering what's going on. So he went through high school okay, having problems with getting into college, went to college, and then his younger brother comes up, 8th grade, totally out of control. And I knew he went to 9th grade, failed, using, I don't know what, but a lot of stuff that we had a lot of experts tell us, and we sent him to a 12-step therapeutic high school, which gave me so much insight to help Tommy. When Mickey was at this school, it was a residential school, so before you could visit them, you had to go to 4 12-step meetings, or you couldn't go see the kids. So that was my first introduction to 12-step. In Massachusetts, there are a lot of different meetings. I don't know, I'm sure it's more challenging up here. we really embraced going to meetings. Partly why he didn't want to do 12-step roads, because I pushed it so much that I thought that was the solution, that something was missing inside him. Turns out his disease progressed, that it was a tornado, it was crazy. And some of the things people have told me is, God has a plan. If whatever it is, Tommy's on his course, you can only do so much. I found I was too much of an enabler. I always softened his blows, and if I could do it again, I don't even know if it would matter, stop bailing him out. I would always think, well, if I gave him $100 to pay that bill up, he could start again and do great. But he wasn't normal. He had an addiction issue, so it only put him deeper into the hole, unfortunately. So sometimes I think I prolonged it, even though I was fighting it. And I kept a journal, which I just gave to Tommy. It's like about 80 pages. It would be a very, because you don't remember what happens at all. I would just say, like today, it's something that happened. And so I just skimmed it for this. It was kind of, difficult to think of all the things we've gone through. I don't know if he'll just burn it or what. But when it's all crazy, and it would be, often I'd say, he lied to me again, and I believed him, because he never lied as a kid. But with what I didn't realize on addiction is they lie about everything. And it's just to get what they want. So I just think get as much education as you can. I went to Learn to Cope meetings, Al-Anon and Family Anonymous. Learn to Cope has an online website, and I think Addicts in the Family has one too. I would say read and learn as much as you can, and don't be ashamed. I was. When he told my brother what he was doing, I practically wanted to kill him. I was so embarrassed, because my family all knew he was messed up, but I didn't want them to know what he was messed up with. And he told, and I figured, well, it is his story, he should be able to tell, and my brother was very good helping him, so he was smart to tell him. But I had my shame, and now it's much more open, because there's so much discussion about it. But back when he was starting stuff, I just didn't want anyone to know it. That's why meetings were great. Those are the only people I could talk to. And I would say Tommy gave me many gifts. It was hell with him. And like he says, who knows what's going to happen tomorrow. But the gifts he has given me in life is to stay in the moment, be thankful and very grateful for what I have. And we have a lot. I'm in awe of him for what he's gone through. And the man he is today, he's got such a great heart. And so there are gifts, and the other gift is I have the best people in my network who all have children struggling with addiction, different levels, lost kids, just so many who I could call anytime. They know, and they'll listen to me, they're like my best friends, but I would have never have known them. So in many ways, there are many blessings with this disease, and it's kind of the outlook you have to take and be positive and upbeat about it, because I just think God has been good to us in so many ways. And one person, this will be my last thing, a person was kind of a counselor, I'll use that word. She said to me, Tommy's purpose in this world may be to be the best addict ever. You don't know, he could be on the streets out cold and it will reach someone. And when you said about your son, how many people, she goes, you don't know how many people he's reaching. He could be there collecting nickels from people, and it's reaching them in some way to make them a better person. So I think you don't realize, and it's a disease that's not as popular as others, but there are a lot of blessings, and I think in life we should take our blessings when we can. So thank you.
I want to thank you guys. That really, I don't know, I just really felt that in my heart, for sure. And I just kind of want to take a minute to recognize some of the organizations that are here. So we have Help the Oxford Hills, and Also across the river? That's Charlene. I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous. So we've got Crooked River Counseling, Memorial Hospital. And do you folks want to maybe just quickly say like what kind of resources you can offer the community?
Hi, I'm Jessica with Healthy Oxford Hills, and I'm the substance use prevention coordinator there. And we are a prevention resource. We do a lot of prevention work, not just in substance use, but tobacco, 5210, healthy activities, SNAP Ed, alcohol, Oxford County Wellness Collaborative. So our table just has a lot of prevention and things to look for parents.
My name is Catherine Bell, and I'm from Crooked River Counseling, located in Bridgeton, Maine. Our main office is actually located on the Bridgeton Hospital campus, and we work very closely with physicians who are waivered to prescribe buprenorphine for people who have opiate addictions. We are in some of the practices there. We provide outpatient counseling, group counseling, intensive outpatient counseling, and like, as I said, a referral to a network of providers that can prescribe buprenorphine. Probably 90% of the people that we see are opiate addicted. That's a really high, high percentage. I, keep hoping, week after week and month after month that the number goes down, but it doesn't seem to. You should introduce it out. All right. This young lady is really important. This is Krista Johnson. She's been my administrative assistant for almost 3 years now, and she has enjoyed working with Crooked River Counseling so much. She was inspired to get her credential as an alcohol and drug counseling aide. We're very, very proud of her.
Hi, I'm Tracy Martin. I'm the new director for the Lakes Regional Recovery Center that will be opening hopefully August, September. It's located at the old part of the Bridgeton Hospital. We're extremely excited. This has been something that this area has needed for so long and has been a vision of so many. And thanks to Catherine Bell, she has made that happen. So we're very excited. We do have membership forms up here. If you know somebody that you'd like to pass them out to, I have business cards. You can call and you can email me if you have questions. Thank you.
The Lakes Region Recovery Center, if I may, is a peer support recovery center. So all the services that are offered at that center are free of charge.
Thank you.